Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
Hello and welcome to today's presentation. Today we are actually going to be looking at 3 mechs, even though, well, in the long run, it's one mech that has 3 different subversions of it in a way. The Enforcer is a common sight in the inner sphere, especially if you're in the rimward portion, pinward portion, towards Davion space. It's probably one of the most common mechs you will have seen as a standard trooper. Every house really has that one standard trooper that they've been using since forever, with the Vindicator for House Liao, the Enforcer for House Davion, or the Panther for House Kurita as examples. But the Enforcer is one of those mechs that actually add evolution, because it's an evolution of a previous design. There's a few different things going on here, and some of the more modern versions of the Enforcer are somewhat significant in terms of its technological prowess in a way. So let's have a look at those 3 machines. The medium trooper mech is probably the equivalent to your regular infantry grunt if you were looking at a standard military. They're not meant to be fancy, they're not meant to be the best, but you're going to have tons of them and they're going to be able to make a difference in the long run. Your best trooper is also capable of filling out a wide variety of roles, just like standard infantrymen in that role, going from things like jumping to hold the line, to flanking, to just being the line of mechs to hold it. And medium mechs, in the end, make ideal troopers because most of the time, they've got a lowish cost, under 5 million C-bills, Fox credits, whichever you're using right now. They're usually fairly easy to produce, they're easy to deploy, and have a general combat profile, which can be used in a variety of ways, and you can have troopers trained on them fairly quickly. Our friends in the Federated Suns have a long history of medium troopers, actually, and their first real homegrown design was the Swordman, which was actually a medium trooper. Your SWD-1 uses primitive technologies, so the heavier cockpit, the bad armor, and some weapons not being fully optimized, but at 40 tons, it put the groundworks down for the medium trooper. It had a top speed of 55 kilometers per hour using an oversized 145 Fusion engine, and it was meant to escort Mackeys and other mechs with that speed range, and it was protected with 10 tons of primitive compound, which was okay, I guess. It was heavily armed, though, with a 5-rack LRM, 5-class autocannon, a pair of medium lasers. Would it be a good mech nowadays? No, it would be rather terrible. If you modernized it a little bit, it could be reasonable as a mech and would still serve in that trooper capacity. Achernar is House Davion's premier mech production company. They've built just about everything for them. When the Star League was falling apart because of Stefan and Maris, well, they decided to put a standard trooper mech in production for the Federated Suns because they probably were going to need it. At 50 ton, the ENF-4R Enforcer is smack in the middle of the pack in more ways than one. It's actually very decent at what it does, and what it does is be a trooper, basically. You've got a Nissan 200 engine, which is a very, very common power plant, and it can get a speed of about 64 kilometers per hour, which is perfectly reasonable. You've got 4 jump jets, so you can jump about 120 meters, which is also really reasonable. You get 9 tons of standard armor, most of it focused forward. The back of the Enforcer is really, really thin. We've had some people come by, ask for changes in the armor plate settings to toughen up the back at least a little bit. I understand people showing up asking for that on these mechs. It's not super difficult to do either. And the old design is cooled by 12 regular heat sinks, which it kind of needs depending on what you're shooting. It doesn't have any ANs, but the gun arms are reinforced, so you can still bash people's head in with them. They're basically used as battering rams in melee combat. You just lose the manual dexterity of having actual ANs. For its weapons, well, it's a Davion mech, so you know what it's going to have. You get that Federated 10-class autocannon, which is fed rather poorly by a ton of ammo. The problem is how the linkage with the ammo magazine and the gun is. At least the magazine is easy to replace. You just have to pull it out. Fairly straightforward. And the whole gun is actually mounted in a special cooling jacket, which makes it not run as hot as a regular AC-10. The problem being that an AC-10 doesn't run that hot to begin with. Oh well. Opposite that, on the other arm, you've got a Chiscomp 43. I prefer Nightwinds, but that's the one they went with. Large laser with a similar range profile as that AC-10. So you've got a very nice mid-range punch compared to a lot of troopers who have one longer range weapon and more shorter range weapons. As a final line of defense, you get a Chiscomp 32 small laser in the left torso, which is reasonable. It can be used for a variety of things as well. It's a decent weapon. For the War of 39, there were a number of custom enforcers that were built, the main one being piloted by Daniel Whalen of the Fox Teeth, and it was a test bed for a few of the technologies recovered from the Elms Memory Core. The main thing was a NACE Mark I prototype Gauss rifle with 2 tons of reload, replacing the AC-10, and the large laser being replaced by a pair of medium lasers. This was not kept as the standard enforcers going forward, but I think it could have become a very interesting variant of the design, and you will see a few of those floating around, which is interesting. As the clan invasion ramped up, the Federated Suns still built and fielded a lot of enforcers, and now they were switching over to the new 5D standard. This is a very straightforward upgrade, and it works really well. The armor is replaced with ferrofibrous. You get 12% more coverage per ton. It's great if you've got the room on the mech to do so. But the real biggest change was the engine being changed for a Nissan 250 rather than Nissan 200, giving you a top speed of about 86 kilometers per hour and a jump range of 150 meters by adding a jump jet. This makes the Enforcer a better cavalry mech while still staying a trooper. It does make it a bit more fragile because of that XL engine, but you're going to have enough Enforcers that losing one and then replacing it is going to be fairly easy. Your main gun is replaced with a Midron XL LB-10X, which is a bit lighter, so you can carry 2 tons of ammo, generally 1 ton of clusters, and 1 ton of slugs. The ammo itself is protected by case, so if you have an ammo explosion, the mech will be disabled, but it'll be easy enough to repair compared to losing the entire machine. Your laser is replaced with an ER large laser, so you get a little bit more range, which is useful, especially when fighting against clan mechs that always have more range than you. But the heatsink kit is not changed, so the mech now runs fairly hot. You're gonna have some people walk in the store and ask for you to switch over the single heatsinks for double heatsinks. It's a common refit, but it's not a standard one. We did get quite a few enforcers over the years, especially these 5Ds, since they've been in production ever since the 3050s era. The change we make is fairly simple. We keep the main gun. We changed the cooling kit to the double heatsinks like we were just saying here, keeping only the 10 that are hard mounted in the engine rather than any extra ones. We add an extra half ton of ferrofibrous armor, generally in the back, and we swap the small laser for a small pulse laser, so you're a little bit better against infantry. And we add a medium laser coaxially on the large laser, sometimes an ER medium laser, depending on what we have in stock and what is available. And this is kind of where things get a little bit weird. The Enforcer production really splits into 2 different models at this point, the Enfield and the Enforcer 3. The Enfield is actually your original design of the Enforcer, which Ekenar bought to finish up the Enforcer in 2777. Your Enforcer 3 is a design that was commissioned by Victorien Steiner Davion in order to increase his image as the good first prince, and to be honest, it actually works quite well. You then have 3 different copies of the Enforcers at 40 tons, the Watchman, the Sentry, and the Cuirass. Each would share parts with the main design. Is basically a scaled down, 10 tons smaller Enforcer body. We won't talk about those 3 in detail, but we'll talk about the other 2 now. What we learned is that the Enfield was actually supposed to replace the Wyvern as the SLDF City Combat Specialist, but it never reached production, even though a lot of mechs in that era did reach production if you look at some of the assaults and things like that. Achenar had the plans, but didn't really have the means to build it, so it languished. It was stuck around in limbo until around 3055, when Blackstone Mechs actually put the darn thing into production. You start with an endo-steel chassis, which is protected by 11 tons of standard compound armor, and you've got a top speed of 86 kilometers per hour, but this one can't jump. This would have made it not as good as a city fighter, honestly. I don't think it would have replaced the Wyvern, and that's probably why it never reached production during the Star League Civil War. Your main gun is a Defiance Disintegrator LB-10X, and it's backed by a Thunderbolt 12 large pulse laser. At shorter range, what you have is a pair of Defiance B3M's medium laser and a Chiscomp small laser. You get a lot more punch on this than on your standard Enforcer, but it's not as mobile because it can't jump. It's a bit of a trade-off, and it's not a bad one in the end. The Enfield will really support your Enforcers if you start having a line with both of them. The END6J, which is another version of the Enfield, is what I would actually call the Enforcer 2. You downgrade your large pulse laser and you take out the small laser, so you can add the 5 jump jets. The thing is, it's really built with Lyran parts, so it's not a Federated Suns mech anymore, especially when the realm is falling apart due to one particularly sociopathic individual. There was a prototype built during the Jihad by Blackstone with the END6S, which was meant to increase the survivability of the design. You can't find that many that were actually produced. The Magna 250 engine is replaced with a light engine, so you increase survivability. You lose a side torso, you don't lose the mech itself. It works a little bit better. The armor is swapped to ferrofibrous to save on weight, and the large pulse laser is downgraded to a standard large laser. It has a lower eat curve, so you can actually take out a double heat sink, and you also add an ECM, which is really useful during that Jihad era, as a lot of jihadist mechs will have those C3I computers. On the Federated Sun side, well, you add the brand new Enforcer, which was the ENF6M Enforcer 3, and it worked like it was supposed to do. You've got your same movement profile as your original Invasion Enforcer, but you use an endo-steel chassis with 10 tons of standard compound rather than ferrofibrous armor. Endo-steel is always harder to source and produce since you need orbital mills to produce it, while ferrofibrous can be produced with a decent amount of time and resources, but it's not super complex. Your main gun is still that Midron XL, but this time it's an Ultra 10 class rather than LBX, so you get double the rate of fire with 2 tons of ammo, so you can run out of ammo fairly quickly. You have to be a little bit careful. Your lasers are a Blazefire Sweet Shot ER large laser and a Chiscomp 2000 ER small laser. It's an Enforcer. It does Enforcer things. The fact that it's designated Enforcer 3 is a little bit fancy and a bit of a marketing scheme, but it works fairly well in the role it's supposed to have. 2 other designs were proposed at the same time, and they share kind of a similar design philosophy. The 6T is an highly accurate sniper with a targeting computer to guide a Gauss rifle and an ER medium laser. It also had an AND for some reason, so it's quite different from a regular Enforcer, but I kind of like it as that sniper. Your 6G is the version without the targeting computer, but where you have 2 extra ER medium laser, an ER small laser, and a medium pulse laser. It'll run really hot, but you're going to get a whole lot of punch, which is really nice. I think this is one of those cases that if you can manage to fit in triple strength Myomer on it, it would be a good idea. There's no standard kit for it though, so it'll be a little bit expensive. The follow-up to the 6G was the 6T, which replaces the Gauss rifle with an Ultra AC-20, making the mech a line breaker. All decent designs in their own right. There is now a very fancy version of the Enforcer 3, which is the ENF7D, and it has a bunch of fancy technology on it. It uses 9.5 tons of light ferrofibrous armor and a torso-mounted cockpit. That's the weird part. And for weapons, you have a Midron XL LBX with case 2 to protect the ammo bins, so if it blows in the back rather than blowing up your entire mech. And the other arm has an ERPPC rather than the ER large laser, with a small pulse laser to take care of infantry. You keep the same mobility, 86 kilometers per hour, 150 meter jump range. It's fairly tough. It's functional. And if one day they get the technology to make torso-mounted interface cockpit, it might be a very fancy machine at that point. So we had a clan customer actually show up here with a bunch of those 7Ds and wanted them ready to combat various things using a few better parts. They provided the equipment and everything we needed for it, just wanted our expertise to fit it together. So what they gave us was actually parts from an original summoner, an LB-10X autocannon, an ERPPC, and a set of small pulse lasers to make everything fully clan graded. It was actually a pretty nice design. I enjoyed working on these bits. The armor is replaced with clan ferrofibrous, which we source here, so it's not a problem at all. And they wanted us to set up a Nova CEWS in the head, along with an extra ton of ammo. This makes the Enforcer 7D a really terrifying machine. Maybe Ausdavion would want to contract us for that if they're able to get the parts provided to us. In 3142, Kalon Industries actually launched a new baseline Enforcer in the Enforcer 5R line, and it's a departure from the other new ones that we just talked about. We've got a Nissan 200 light engine, which gives it a speed of 65 kilometers per hour, a jump range of 120 meters, so it's closer to our original Enforcer. The body is protected with ferrofibrous, and all the ammo is in case 2 bins, so if it blows out the back, the classic. I think nowadays those case 2s are going to be the standard on most mechs. Hopefully people realize how useful they really are. Your main gun is that Midron XL LB-10X, the old classic, but the large laser is actually replaced with a re-engineered laser, which is great at punching through special armor like laser reflective, which is very common in Aus Kurida's lineup of mechs, and some of the clan specialty armor like ferrolamellar. You get an extra ER small laser for backup, so it's much closer to your original Enforcer, and it works fairly well as a package. The good people at Ausdavion have had breakthrough in autocannon technology recently, for good reason since they use the most of them, and are basically able to copy clan-grade weapons one for one, or very close to it. This leads me to believe that we are going to see plenty of those new Enforcer variants, Enforcer 1s, Enforcer 3s mainly, to be using those clan autocannon weapons. Gives you a small weight change, but it's a huge advantage on medium mechs. If you save a ton or two on a medium mech, that's a ton or two that you can put on making it more survivable, lasting longer in battle with more ammo, or simply adding a new weapon system, or even electronic warfare equipment. I really think the Enforcer is the definition of a medium trooper. All other troopers should look at the Enforcers to try to figure out what they need to do and how they need to do it. With so many of them in circulation, new designs, new variants, side designs, it's a thing that any tech needs to know about, and you need to study the Enforcer's internal structure system to be able to repair about 6 different, completely different actually, mechs. So please take the time to grab the manual in the break room, give it a good reading through, and if you need help, just remember that you can come up to me or any of the lead techs, and we'll be more than glad to help you guys. So I thank you very much for listening to me for so long. I hope you have a very nice rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.